Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm James.
And welcome to the Cornwall Property Podcast, where every week we bring you the latest news, hot topics and guidance around the Cornwall property market.
Stay tuned to be informed, inspired and to have any of your property related questions answered by trusted local property professionals.
Hello and welcome back to the Cornwall Property Podcast. This is episode 35. I'm Dan.
I'm James.
And we have the pleasure of welcoming back Sophie Lang. Sophie is our lettings expert. Sophie, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
That's it, no pressure. So those of you that listened to last week's episode, you would have heard Sophie sprout her knowledge, her amazing wisdom on property and lettings. And for those of you that aren't so familiar or haven't listened, where the heck have you been? But again, Sophie, just give us a little update on who you are. Why are you so knowledgeable? How has this come about?
Yeah, so I'm Sophie Lang. I am a letting expert for Cornwall. I've been working in the industry for 17 years, and I run an agency down in Falmouth covering HMOs and residential and some student. And yeah, super passionate about and an advocate for landlords and the letting industry.
Massively. And the on and off air chats that we've been having, Sophie really does know her stuff. And definitely, if you've got any questions, please.
Verging on sad.
But it was never. No, I say we have been geeking out big time. Jay here, who is producing the podcast for us, we've just woken him back up. But no, it's been great fun and really, really appreciate you joining us, Sophie. So without further ado, this is our Ask Dan and James episode. However, as we've got a special guest with us, it's going to be our Ask Sophie episode. So thank you so much.
No
and again,
pressure.
no pressure. For those of you that aren't familiar with the podcast, we are here to inform, educate, inspire you guys to get involved with property. And we're obviously focusing on the Cornwall property area of property. And there's obviously an issue here in Cornwall. If you don't know about this issue, where have you been? There's a lot of housing. There's not enough housing even. There's a lot of people needing housing. There's not enough housing on the market. And we're just trying to educate you guys on how you can help get involved with property. So this is your opportunity to get in touch and let's help you.
Absolutely. And just remember, guys, you can do this by going to cornwallpropertypodcast.com, go onto our front page there and scroll down to the bottom and you can send us a message that way. Or as I always say, many of you do, go onto our socials such as Facebook and send us a message on there. Just reach out. We are here standing by alongside Sophie to answer your questions and anything you've got property related.
For sure. Right, James, kick us off.
Yeah, as Dan said, this is the fun part of the show where you guys get to put in your questions. So without further ado, I shall start with Joanne in Chasewater, who is asking this question. I have 3 rental properties, which I have just inherited in Truro. Very nice. They consist of a 2-bed flat, a 1-bed flat and a 5-bed HMO. Wow, not a bad bit of stock there. No, very sorry for that. I am undecided whether or not I should go. Should I self-manage or hand them over to a lettings agent? Which would you recommend? Very good question there.
Sophie reckons we should just self-manage them all, doesn't she?
Yeah, you said that before the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that?
I don't want any work.
Well, you could argue this might be a biased question, but I think we have actually we briefed Sophie on a couple of these questions and massively agree with everything you said. So go on. What should Joanne do? What would you recommend?
I mean, obviously, Joanne sounds like an accidental landlord. We get a lot of those in Cornwall, inheritance, things like that. It really depends on your background knowledge, but also with the current climate as it is, the legislation changing, the white paper, all the compliance involved, I feel having an agent is like having an insurance policy. You wouldn't drive your car without an insurance policy, and the tariffs, I would argue, are higher from renting your property out and not doing what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, back 17 years ago, we used to hand out a tenancy agreement, a gas safety certificate and your keys, and that was it. But these days, the compliance is massive. There's 172 pieces of legislation you need to comply with to make sure your property's safe. James's face looks slightly petrified. You need to make sure you're doing everything correctly because the repercussions are massive. There's fines now from the local council up to £30,000. There is not being able to evict your tenant. The tenant can now sue you under fitness homes for human habitation, which is a new thing that came in a couple of years ago, for civil damages. So, I think an agent is there because we are knowledgeable, we live and breathe property every single day, and we will make sure that your property is getting the best return as well. And obviously she has mentioned HMO. Self-managing landlords of HMOs are under a lot of strain and stress. There's a lot to be compliant with. It's a lot of your time. with tenants contacting you about, issues all times of day.
Oh yes.
Locked out is one of my favourites at 1 a.m. It depends really on whether you're looking to educate yourself to that level or whether you just want it to become a passive income, because that is a great little portfolio to inherit as your first kind of foray into like the rental market, and it's got potential to earn you a lovely passive income. But I would highly advise you look into the repercussions of being a landlord, what's involved, and whether you actually want to take that on and educate yourself to that degree.
I suppose again, and just to add, and thank you, very valued information. And one thing that I try and empathise as well is that you mentioned a £30,000 fine. People are like, oh yeah, they're never going to do anything, are they? They're not going to really happen. But you mentioned a horror story a minute ago that actually has happened.
In Falmouth, there has been recent case where a landlord was running a HMO. They did get advice, but didn't take it. Thought it'd be fine. Tried to feign ignorance on the law, and the council have come down hard on them. They're now in a bit of a black hole with repayment orders to previous tenants, and also the first 30k fine that the council has given locally up to their max level for just not tick boxing, smoke alarms. It was a HMO, so there was more than that, but basics weren't done. And that's the kind of repercussions. And the council are getting harder on it, because one is that the fines that they get now go straight into the council pot. They don't go to government anymore. So the councils are seeing this as an income stream.
So there's a little incentive for them.
Absolutely. So they are putting more money into resources for inspectors to go out and look. That's not just HMO properties, that is residential properties, looking at the health and safety regulations you now have to follow for your 29 hazards in a property. And they can pop £170 on the spot fine for breaching one of those just by turning up. They can liaise with the tenant, get access and go in. So, you need to be making sure that your property is ticking all those boxes. It's all about compliance. It's about risk assessing. And the best person for that is someone who's qualified and does it every day.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think it's, and I don't know your experience there, Joanne, but if you've had, properties for a long time, you've sort of grown with those properties, so as and when the legislation comes in, especially with the HMOs, you have to redo your licence every few years. But if you don't have any property and there isn't a lot of experience and you've just inherited this portfolio, which is amazing, well done you, but you also don't really know the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of that property, like, is it meeting the compliance? But then again, if you really, really do want to be sort of hands-on and get involved with that, maybe a suggestion, could you split it up? Maybe pass the HMO and the 2-bed flat over to an agent, watch what they do and observe, and then see what's going on with the 1-bed flat and see, could I maybe try that one myself and see how I get on if you want to be involved. But I think, Sophie, you hit a really good point, is the time. Can you give the time for this? Because, properties do fail with certain things. A boiler can go, you've got to deliver and get that back up and running, especially in the bleak winter in Cornwall, and you have a duty of care for that tenant. So just think about your time and marry that up with this wonderful opportunity that you've got.
Absolutely. One other small point to make on the HMO that I know mistakes are made: HMO licenses no longer transfer. We've had a lot of estate agents actually giving wrong information on that when you buy a HMO, it's already got a HMO license, you're all good to go. They don't transfer anymore. You have to reapply if you're a new owner. So double check if you've inherited the property. You'll have to make sure you apply for the HMO license.
And make sure it's licensed for a start.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
It does.
There's a little one, but no, brilliant. And the way I'd look at it as well, Joanne, is, as awful as it sounds, you're passing the buck. As Sophie writes, it's your insurance policy. This is my responsibility now. You can then sleep at night, not having to worry or be concerned about it. Really, it's something you can just go, right, okay, I'm a bit concerned. No, actually, this is Sophie's responsibility now. I'm passing this over to Sophie, and this is what I'm paying them for. So again, obviously you're going to be paying for the service, but at the same time, you can sleep at night knowing that it's all good and you're safe and you're covered. So definitely think it's worthwhile considering both options. And as I think we're all in agreement, go to management.
No, absolutely. And just one other quick point I would make is, obviously we know that you've inherited these properties, which is great, but they may be already with tenants in. They're already managed with the agent. But as we sort of discussed in our last episode with yourself, Sophie, the things to look out for a good letting agent. So if it is already let out with a managing agent, just do your due diligence on them and make sure that they are compliant as a company, and go and say hi and get your own gut feeling for them.
Absolutely.
Fair shout, definitely. So second and final question for today is from Peter in Penzance. I think I say second question and the final question, but I think Peter's been sneakier and got a couple in. But Sophie, go throw this at you. Loving the content, guys. Thank you so much. Please keep it up. Thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. My question is about letting agency fees. I was wondering what you would expect a letting agency to charge for a standard buy-to-let management service. I'm assuming it will be between 8 to 12%. Would this be about right? Also, what should I be expecting for this price? So that's the first kind of section of that question. Then he does go on to then say, what also would my options be alternatively? Tenant find service rather than full management? Would this perhaps work out a bit more? Would this price overall do the same versus the percentage price? All right. So Peter's basically asking us, how much would you expect to pay for a letting agency management fee? What do you get for that money? And alternatively, is it more or less than if you just did a tenancy find?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it completely depends from agent to agent. Generally in Cornwall, the average is between 8 and 12. However, if you go for an 8, bear in mind what they don't include in their management. So generally, the lower the initial percentage, the less they include. So once you go through their terms of business, you'll find that they charge for inspections, that they charge for checkouts, that they will charge for additional things on top of that. So it's important to look at see what's included in their 8%, which will be in their terms of business. We charge 12 as a standard for residential and then 15 for HMO. Just due to the amount of work involved, but obviously our terms of business does detail when it's what's included in that management, what goes above and beyond that management. So yeah, just be careful what the add-ons are, because an agent will come out and say I charge 8% and it's lower than someone else, but once you start getting to the nitty-gritty, you'll find the add-ons then actually go above what percentage someone else may have charged that includes that.
It's almost a hook price,
yeah,
isn't
absolutely.
it?
But also you get what you paid for. Obviously, don't go for budget, because you get budget. You're paying for an agent's time, expertise, knowledge, and any agent will need to sit there and justify their fee to you, which is what I do on appointments. All of our team are qualified. We've all got minimum qualifications. It's the amount and cost that we put in to make sure that your service is the best it can be, and that we give you the best service for what we charge. There's the old analogy of things like, I think there's a meme that goes around with a tattoo of a horse, and I think this is what you get when you pay premium, and this is what you get when you pay budget. So budget isn't always best. It's a false economy, and you just need to look carefully to pick the terms apart. But every agent is completely different. I don't know any agents that follow the same course, and it just depends on their terms, but get down to the nitty gritty. But under law, agents do have to state their fees extremely clearly on their website, and on their terms of business. So they should have a fee scheduled, which makes it much easier. They're not allowed to hide fees anymore. So make sure that they've got a clear fee structure, and that there's no hidden. They can't hide anything.
No, very
great advice.
And with regards to the tenant find side of things, obviously these are, by the sounds of it, standard buy to let. Yes, so standard buy to let, but I guess that tenant find would be a lot less onerous than you would expect a HMO tenant find as well. Because I know you do a lot of HMO management as well.
Yeah, we do a lot of HMO management. We don't do let any services on HMOs anymore, just because of the risk involved. Legally, if we put a tenant in place, we are duty bound to that property regardless of if our service has ended. So it wasn't financially viable for us to take on that when we're not in control of the management of that property. So you'll find that more and more. You'll also find that let only fees are increasing considerably across the board, just because of the amount now involved. Obviously, we had the tenant fee ban come in 2019, which meant that agents and landlords can't charge tenants anything other than rent deposit and permitted fees. So we used to get tenants to pay for their referencing. We can't do that anymore. So obviously tenants, in my opinion, still need to be referenced, because it's important to pre-vet your tenants. There are agents that stopped referencing because they didn't want to pass the cost on to the landlord, and they didn't want to absorb the cost. And that's a scary concept to me, because you're putting in an unknown into a property and you've started off on the wrong foot immediately. So these costs have to be factored into a business. We are a business, we're not a charity, but we want to make sure that our service reflects what we're charging for it. So we do it on a case-by-case basis, because it does depend on the property, the landlord, what services they want, what they don't want. I mean, we've allowed landlords that I don't want any inspections because I'll do them myself. I will convince them why that's a terrible idea. But we will sit with landlords and discuss. But yeah, the let only side you will find increasing. across the board. Agents are trying to phase it out more just because of the risk involved to agents for putting in a tenant and the duty of care they have to that tenant, for then the landlord to self-manage and not necessarily know what they're doing. We have to get landlords to sign a bit of disclaimer on our let-onlys. So it's a full list of, are you aware of what your responsibilities are, that you have to comply with this and this. It's not meant to scare them, but it does. But it's just we have a duty of care to our client's landlord, that they know what they're doing and that they're going to be okay. And that's there whether it's a let only or a fully managed. So we need to make sure they understand what their obligations are as a landlord, because a lot don't.
No,
Agreed.
Definitely. And sadly, too many don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think with the white paper, bringing in the ombudsman is going to really help with self-managed landlords, because at the moment there's not a lot of recourse apart from court. So, and we get a bad rap in media, agents and landlords. We're cobbed all together as these terrible humans that rip people off. And that's not the case. There is a small minority, but they're the ones that make the press all the time. Your rogue landlords. Generally, they're HMO landlords, to be fair. But your rogue landlords that, shove as many people into a property as possible, or don't meet standards, don't do maintenance. And they're horrible stories, but it is minority. But because they're the ones that make the press, it then spreads out to the wider perception of our industry, which is sad. And shelter doesn't help.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. So we won't go into that.
No.
But no, they're very, very valid. And I think hopefully, Peter, that will help answer your question there. And well, Sophie, you've been so helpful. How can people get in touch with you? If people want to perhaps have a chat about how you could help them with their management side of things, or they want to follow up for that, first of all, LinkedIn, guys, make sure you do mention your LinkedIn, because that's very active as well on there.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Sophie Lang on LinkedIn. I have got my email address is sl@lewishaughtonwills.com. That's Haughton, Haughton, because no one can spell it. And also I'm contactable through my LinkedIn. I have a Facebook page, which is just Sophie Lang. You're always welcome to message me on there. So yeah, I'm all over the place.
Definitely. Yeah, do get connected, because Sophie's also regularly sharing some really, really popular and interesting information about property and lettings and stuff like that. So just to get your confidence, get some information, and if you've ever got questions, Sophie's just very, very approachable, very, very helpful, and as you can all hear and experience, she's very, very knowledgeable as well.
Absolutely, and Dan and I certainly aren't biased, but we've got lots of family and friends in the property industry down here in Cornwall, and we've only ever heard amazing things from Sophie Lang Services. So
that's lovely to hear.
Yeah, can certainly recommend. Absolutely. So thank you again, Sophie, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
First guest.
I know. I'm very honoured. No, thank you very much. It's been great. Really excited to come here today.
Absolutely. And just remember, guys, how to get in contact with us for your own questions and anything property related is cornwallpropertypodcast.com. Go onto the front page there, scroll all the way down, and you can send us a message that way. Or, as many of you do, go onto Facebook and send us a message that way. Reach out. Without you guys, we wouldn't have the show. So thank you to all the viewers and listeners that come to us.
Yes, and another big thank you to Sophie for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So guys, that is it for today's podcast. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave us a little review, and until next time. So goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.